Welcome back. We have just come back from executive session at 6:39, and we will continue through our agenda. So the next item on our agenda is our Monomoy Regional High School student representative, Talia.
Good evening, school committee members. It is my pleasure to be back and at it again with another report. Starting at the beginning of November, we had the Credit for Life Fair. This event proved instrumental in preparing seniors for the financial independence we'll experience after high school. Volunteers generously shared their time to impart valuable life skills, including proper budgeting for income and practical tips like learning how to tie a tie. The fall show, Night Chills, held on November 9th, 10th, and 11th, received constant praise from the audience. Our talented actors delivered outstanding performances, contributing to the overall success. Early this December, high school band students mentored middle schoolers. In a well-loved tradition reinstated after the challenges posed by COVID, high school band students visited the middle school to teach and guide younger musicians. As a fifth grader who always looked forward to when the high school students would visit us, it's remarkable to see the growth from my time in the middle school band in fifth grade to now. Continuing in the land of the performing arts, the Performing Arts Department recently returned from an amazing trip to New York City, seeing 3 shows including The Nutcracker and Broadway hits like Chicago and Hadestown. The trip also included visits to the Museum of the Moving Image, Museum of Broadway, and the Metropolitan Museum, as well as the Stage Combat Workshop and a Meet the Actor Q&A with a cast member from Chicago. This cultural experience inspired and prepared performing arts students for the winter concert held this past Tuesday and upcoming auditions for the spring musical Beauty and the Beast on Monday, December 18th. Also, if you're looking for something to do after the meeting, and if it's still going on, the middle school has their winter concert tonight in the auditorium. You might have heard them trumpeting away. Monomoy students embarked on another memorable journey in early November to Washington, D.C. for an AP government trip. We had the pleasure of meeting Senator Ed Markey, attending Senate meetings, and receiving a personal tour of the State Department. And one thing I'll also always remember is hearing the updates for our sports teams, as the boys' soccer team and girls' field hockey both made their way to the Final Four games and eventually both made their way to their respective championship games. Despite not earning a victory in either games, we continue to celebrate their remarkable achievements. Now, we begin the winter season with games and practices already in session. This November, we also welcomed the newest members of Monomoy's National Honor Society. We congratulate all of our members for this remarkable achievement, and we thank Ms. Carolyn Carey, the selected speaker, for her inspiring words. Additionally, Monomoy hosted the Celebration of Excellence, where students came together to celebrate their high academic achievements in AP tests, earning the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship and achieving perfect MCAS scores. We extend our sincere congratulations to all students for their hard work paying off in these academic fields. Lastly, Monomoy held many field trips for our students with the annual Residential Construction Career Day hosted by the Home Builders and Remodelers Association of Cape Cod, where Monomoy students explored career and trade opportunities. In addition, seniors participated in a 4Cs trip, while 8th graders had the option to attend a visit to Cape Cod Tech. These past months have been very busy for all of our students, but especially for seniors who are at the height of college application and acceptances. We look forward to every path each one of us takes, and it's a very exciting time for all of us. Thank you for your time, and I hope all of you have a great evening and happy holidays.
Thank you. All right, moving right along to public comment. Anyone here for public comment? Just come up to the mic and state your name and your address, please, for the record.
My address? Okay. Good evening. My name is Meredith Fry. I live at 18 Cross Tree Hollow, North Chatham. My son is Seamus St. Pierre. He's a junior at Monomoy High School and a varsity student athlete in both soccer and lacrosse. I'm here tonight to ask the school committee to establish a policy regarding athletic transportation to away games over 100 miles for all sports. A few years ago, the MIAA shifted its tournament system where like-sized schools are paired up by rankings. Our teams end up traveling across the state for tournament play. The tournament format has changed, and we need to change how we transport our student athletes. In November, the boys' varsity soccer team traveled to Deerfield, Massachusetts for a tournament game 187 miles away, 7 hours round trip for a night game on a school bus. The boys got home close to midnight on a school night. Coaches and parents requested that the boys travel in a coach bus. Our request was denied because of fairness and Title IX policy. In fact, the girls' softball team last spring had to travel to a school in on a school bus in Lenox, Massachusetts. I believe the field hockey team has had to travel a far distance as well. Sending our student athletes and children in a school bus for highway travel over 100 miles is dangerous and irresponsible. There are no seatbelts, there are no bathrooms, there is no light to do homework. Safety of our children should be our greatest priority. I ask you tonight to be proactive and make a change, and please create a policy for coach buses for athletic travel. We want to set up our student athletes and children for success and safety on and off the field. And I do have other parent supporters here with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will definitely take that under advisement.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Charles?
Charles Gruska, 6 Teaberry Ave, Harwich. 3 items I want to comment on. First, a part of your agenda tonight, you'll be reviewing first reading on school policy on searches and interventions. It's a reminder to the committee that this is a very high priority item to the high school council on which I served. You were presented a presentation by the 8th grade civics students last year. They were initiators of this desire of change in policy. So just a reminder that this is very important to both the high school council and the students at the high school level. Part of their presentation also was that there be increased awareness, increased education at the middle and elementary schools on the issues of vaping and other substances, particularly with the concern we're having with the edibles, that they're just tremendously scary in the education that we're getting. My understanding is the new health curriculum standards are going to be dealing with that, but just ask you to monitor that closely. Again, as this item that was very important to the students here at the high school as well as the high school council. Second, kudos to the students and staff in the music department for another great concert on Tuesday. As a lifelong musician, playing in a 20-piece orchestra with members from 5 of 6 New England states, we'll be at First Night Chatham on December 31st. I am continued to be blown away by the performance and of the student musicians and singers, vocalists here at the high school, and at the staff who lead them, Miss Richard and Mr. Naus, who volunteers his time putting together one of the best musical groups in the area. I've told him you can go out on the road and charge a good price for your performances. You've seen them at your meetings in the past. What I noticed this time around was the large crowd of retirees who have no connection to the school, who pay taxes and who support the budget and the efforts that you put forward. That crowd is growing with every performance, whether it's the drama productions or the musical productions. It's telling me, and I'm in that group. That's the group I live in out in the community, and I know that they are beginning to build a great pride in and support for the school district. And the music departments and the whole performing arts department's a big part of that. As one who was a principal for 24 years, I always thought that the performing arts was probably the MVP department, because the community at large that has no connection to the school, if they're going to judge the school, what's going on every day in the classroom, they judge it by what they see at performances. When the students come out and show what they can do under the teaching and instruction that they've had, that projects to a general view of the school of quality, and it couldn't be any better than here at Monomoy. And so I share. My wife and I go to several Cape Symphony concerts. We enjoy the Monomoy concerts as much as we do the Cape Symphony. We go to several drama productions in the community of community theater professional. We enjoy the Monomoy drama productions and school musical as much as anything else out there in the community on a professional status. Finally, tonight is the initiation of the wonderful FY25 budget process. I I only had a quick opportunity to look at the budget while you were in executive session and for the first time. I was hoping it would reflect all the needs of the district so that you could be presented initially with the true cost of meeting all those needs. I know it doesn't. I was going to say if it didn't, that I would urge the school committee to request to see what the assessments would be generated if all of the needs were met. That's important information for the whole community to have. As I've said before, you're not hearing this from me for the first time, to know exactly what does it take to maintain what we have and meet the new needs that develop every year. That's a very important piece of information, and the community will never know that unless they hear it, unless they hear that figure to start with. I also urge you to learn from last year, those of you who are on the committee. I was here in the audience when you came this close to cutting items from the budget, very important items, because of a feeling of a need of fiscal restraint coming perhaps from the community. But fortunately, some members of the committee turned the tide on that, and we had a remarkable speech given by one of your members that I would encourage all of you to go back and review the recording of that meeting and listen to Ms. Finnegan's address to you over and over again, at least once a week in the budget season ahead, to develop the courage that's needed. We're talking about courage a lot at the strategic planning work that we're doing. As a big topic last night at a meeting. So I urge you to give us a chance, give those of us like myself that I speak for in the community, people who don't have kids in school. I have one grandchild, a junior at the high school. That would be the last child on school choice. But many in the community that I'm seeing that support the schools, they're coming out, they have pride in the school. Give us a chance. Let us have a chance to vote on what the school really, what the district needs to operate the schools, to maintain the quality we have, and to meet the new needs that have developed. When you didn't make those cuts last year and you went ahead and took that courageous step, you got a very strong support from the Finance Committee in Harwich, probably the strongest that you've ever received. You got support from the Select Board, and you got a unanimous support from the Harwich community at town meeting. Please bring to town meetings an opportunity for people to show by their vote, have the opportunity to show whether we will support what the schools need, as difficult as these times are. And don't lose sight of the fact, I saw the assessment increases, don't ever lose sight of what inflation has been running for the last 2 or 3 years when you talk about to the people you have to talk about and make decisions on these particular increases in the budget and in the assessments. So with that in mind, my best to you during your favorite part of the year, and thank you again for the opportunity to express my needs and my comments to you on these matters. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Charles.
I just want to say aloud, I apologize, that while you were in executive session, this space was interrupted by an announcement they were making in the auditorium. We may hear that again because of the show in the auditorium, just not to be startled when you hear it. I was.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving right along to the approval of the school committee minutes from November 9th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Okay. Next are on the agenda are reports and discussion, and first up is the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Advisory Council update. I'm not sure who's starting.
No, did I do it wrong? You hit share. Oh, do you want to? Sure. Just make sure it launches, okay.
Hi there, Joy Jordan, Community Engagement Coordinator for the district. I am the liaison to the council, and unfortunately, most of the council members could not be here tonight due to a whole variety of schedule conflicts. but they did work on this presentation over the last couple of months. So this is their voice coming through. I am just sort of the messenger for a lot of this. And I know you have had presentations about the Equity Task Force and the task force's recommendation to create the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Belonging Advisory Council to the superintendent. So I'm not going to go through all of that again, but we're going to give you a brief overview of the work that the council is doing and some recommendations that the council has moving forward. And I think we're going to start with a why.
Statement from the superintendent.
Yes. Who is watching at home, I believe.
Yes.
So Dr. Millen will step in for that part, and then we'll also have Mr. Schaefer at some point.
Do you want to move the slide? That'd be good. So Robin Millen, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. I am stepping in for the superintendent this evening. He is out, but he has sent a statement to provide the why for this council, and I'm going to read his writing verbatim that he just sent to me, so bear with me. And it's on my phone, so it's like little. But simply put, this is Superintendent Carpenter's word, simply put, nothing that's spewed out on the radio late in November about the middle school belonging workshops was factual, except the name of the facilitator, Trent Day Hall, who was nothing short of exceptional in his work with our students. He is very well respected for his work with many school districts throughout the country. I personally, and again, this is Scott's words, but I did too, I personally participated in the afternoon workshops on both days Mr. Hall was working with our students. The purpose of our belonging workshops was to help build a stronger middle school culture among our students. Kids, particularly middle schoolers, can sometimes be unkind towards their peers. Name-calling, verbal insults, slurs, and bullying happen. Mr. Hall emphasizes dignity, the value that no one can take from us. He focuses on building a culture of acceptance, getting to know peers students might not have interacted with before, and valuing one another. Students leave his workshops feeling more connected, more welcomed, and in a headspace to learn. We have as a part of our organizational goals that all children will feel like they belong and all children will realize success. Goals that cannot be attained unless we continually nurture and build a culture of acceptance, kindness, and belonging within our schools. The workshops at the middle school did just that. Contrary to the venom spewed on the radio, the workshops weren't sessions to indoctrinate children into the critical race theory. Mr. Hall never discussed race or racism. His focus was simply helping students build a culture of belonging and connectedness. The radio host stated that back in the day, everyone was accepted, so why focus on belonging now? He repeatedly attacked the need for schools to emphasize diversity, equity, and inclusion, but his entire message and that of those who called into the show was a case study of why communities, even communities on the Cape, need to be concerned with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging for all that live here. Here is a direct quote from the host. Quote, "The next student in line to see Old Trent Hall is a young 5th grade white girl. What are they going to do? Let her into a room, close the door, especially when she is white and he is black? This is pretty scary. They are pulling them into rooms and asking them the questions." Unquote. The questions the radio host was referring to was the pronouns, what pronouns do students use? Pronouns that the host included were he, her, and it, and even mentioned cat. To be clear, none of this happened. Nobody worked alone with Mr. Hall. Rather, classrooms of students, their teachers, middle school administrators, and even our superintendent worked together to foster a stronger school community. Nobody asked about pronouns or anything nonsense that was raised on the radio show. Ask yourself, why would a radio host put forth such a false narrative? Why falsely say that a black man was pulling white girls into a room and closing a door? Why falsely raise the issue of pronouns? Who was the radio host trying to alienate from our schools and communities, and why? If anything, the radio host and his callers provided a textbook example of why focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is needed at Monomoy, across the Cape, and across our country. Sincerely, Scott Carpenter, Superintendent, Monomoy Regional School District.
Thank you.
And so as I noted, the bulk of this presentation was prepared by the council months ago, and this recent incident seemed to crystallize for Dr. Carpenter and the members of the council a specific example of why this work is needed and what the council is working to achieve. So that was sort of the introduction to some of the more specifics. Now, whoops, wrong way. So the last school year, there were about 13 regularly active members in the council. This year, we have been lucky in the last month or so to have about 5 or 6 new members join. So it is growing all of the time, and it's a really nice balance of parents and caregivers, students, staff members in the district, community members that don't have kids in our schools. So there's a lot of voices represented, and the council is welcoming new members all the time. So if anyone out there watching wants to join, you can find information on the website. And as I said, they all wanted to be here. There were a number of different reasons why folks couldn't make it tonight, but they hope to be back in the spring so you can meet most of them in person. Going the wrong way. So as I mentioned, you know the history of the recommendation of the Equity Task Force, which met for 2 years from 2020 to 2022. Their recommendation was to create an advisory council that would specifically advise the superintendent and the school committee, and vice versa. The superintendent could look to this council for their input on these types of issues. So the advisory council was formed last year, worked throughout the year, and came up with their mission, which I'm not going to reread all of it to you, but the goal is one that we've already heard a couple times tonight, to make everyone feel like they belong in our district, not just students, staff members, families, community members, to really create that welcoming and equitable environment. The council narrowed it down to a few specific goals that they were going to work on, all sorts of opportunities to improve the current approaches to equity, inclusion, belonging. Look for any barriers that might be preventing certain cohorts of students from achieving. And the council has spent a lot of time reviewing data, really looking at the numbers, seeing what actual outcomes are so they can help look for areas that might need to be improved, and help build an action plan to address all of these different issues. The council has served in a number of ways. It has acted as a sounding board to the superintendent and other school administrators when there are challenging situations that need a range of voices to provide input. It's reviewed all the data, as I said, and it has created some recommendations that the council members have come to consensus on moving forward to you as a school committee to consider for implementation. Do you want to jump in, Mr. Schaefer?
So is it number 2 recommendation?
Well,
So
you can
professional
do
development?
number 1 too.
Okay.
Introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Michael Schaefer. I'm a teacher at Monomoy Regional Middle School. I am the teacher for the English language learners. So I'm a loudmouth Irish kid representing all the other kids that come from other countries. I'm a Harwich Townie, or as we like to call ourselves, riffraff. One of the things the group has recommended is increase professional development for educators on equity-related topics, specifically ensure that PD is ongoing and includes practical tips for having these types of conversations. So again, we've identified that curriculum department would be the group that could handle that. But really, what speaks to me, I didn't like school. I hated school. 5th grade, I finally had a male teacher. You know, I had 2 male teachers in 5th grade. I'd never had a male teacher before. Made a huge difference. All of a sudden, I liked school, someone I could relate to. You know, in high school, Glenn Rose was terrific, really helped me out. I had moved here in 9th grade, and I didn't know anyone, and he really went out of his way to make me feel welcome. So I deal with 5th graders on a regular basis. I go out of my way to find the kids that don't love school and try and connect. We need teachers that represent our student body I teach in classes that, in a class of 24, 8 of them will be students of color. In our building, we do not have any teachers of color. So I would like to make it a focus of let's come up with a recruiting team. Let's go to the job fairs. Let's go invite people. I run clubs after school. I run a club for cooking. I run a club for bicycles. A few years ago, they did a survey of what kids participate in, what groups, in what activities. And the students of color participate in sports, but that's about all they participate in, except the clubs that I was running. And Mark Wilson, the previous principal, asked me, why do those kids come to your class? And I said, I just go and ask them. I invite them. So I would like us to come up with a group to go to the job fairs, to go to the colleges, and invite people that represent our school district population, our school population, to come and teach with us. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, Robin Millen, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and I am going to speak for myself now. But the professional development, and I have just recently obviously been in and out of this advisory council, but we did do a lot of speaking the first time I was there about whose zone of influence, because sometimes people get into these types of situations and then they have all these ideas and there's not really a zone of influence. They can't make a change where they really want it. So it was really important that this committee, and they've done a nice job, are starting to show you who they believe is on the zone of influence for these things. So like the professional development, I know we didn't talk about this, but even the in-situ opportunity that we had with Mr. Trent Hall this last week, the students, the teachers, the administrators, we're all learning together. They were having a shared responsibility in the professional development of understanding what dignity and belonging were. So, and then we have other events going all the time. We have a book club going right now, January 16th, which is our full professional development day. We have 3 outside experts coming in to talk about different avenues and different lanes of professional development, and I'm happy to talk a little bit longer about that. But you can see up here, there's been other recommendations for our department, so Lindsay, Anne Marie, she's behind me, at the curriculum department to do certain things which we've already also started to put into place, including equity audits and equity pauses, we call them, to make sure that throughout our curriculum, we have what we call windows, mirrors, and doors, so that people can see themselves not only in the teaching, but also in the books in the library, in the clubs, in the events, and things like that. So this group also is recommending that we get the word out there. Like anybody can be part of this advisory council. And so to be more robust and really to have a great view and a great vision and all these things, because it takes multiple voices to stop everybody and say, hey, have we thought it through this lens? So membership, increasing the membership on the council, just putting it out there. If you want to join us, it's published all the time. Joy does a great job of getting the information out. Please join us. We'd love to hear all voices. Okay, all voices need to be at the table, and all voices need to be heard and feel like they belong. And then, of course, that outreach to the students, the staff, the families, and the community by way of educational sessions. So looking at how do we offer our parent universities? How do we make sure we get this discussion out beyond our walls of our school? Because as we know, equity, diversity, inclusion, belonging can't just happen here. It's got to happen throughout our community. When you have good schools, you have good communities, and when you have good communities, you have good schools. So I appreciate the recommendations from this council, and we'll continue to work towards achieving them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, moving right along to our MCAS report. You first. Ms. Police.
Hello, everybody. Am I going to operate that? Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Jen Police, Monomoy Regional High School Principal, here to discuss some exciting trends in our MCAS data, and I'm hoping to, sort of present this in a little different way so you guys can make some connections to our data that's pretty visible across 3 content areas. She's telling me to click down. Go ahead.
She's dumbing it down for us.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Okay, so I'm going to start with grade 8 English Language Arts, and the column on the left is the high school data, and the column in the middle is the state data. And of course, the
differential is the right-hand column. So as we talked about a little bit the last time I was here, we're starting to see things trend in the right direction. I just want to point out a couple of things about grade 8 that you're going to see here. In 2021, the grade 8 test was a sampling. It was called a sampling. It was only half of the MCAS exam. So I think that that's important to keep in mind. And also, as you see this data as we move through, and I'm certainly not gonna read it to you, but 2021 was the year that we were hybrid, and kids had a choice and families had a choice. They could either be fully remote or hybrid, and our high-need students were here all the time. And just another interesting piece of information that you want to keep in mind is we had a 10:30 start time, and we ran the 3-by-3 schedule. So students came in for 3 80-minute classes one day, and then the next day were the other 3. So that's something just to keep in mind as we sort of move forward. Down arrow. Whoops, up arrow. Okay. Grade 10. So grade 10, English Language Arts. You can see, I just want to point out that the interesting date here, that our highest data was the year that we had a 10:30 start time. Students were focusing on fewer courses. They were in the classroom, so minutes in front of their teacher was longer. So less bell to bell, more concentrated instruction. And here's another thing, that was also the year that the state released their power standards. So our teachers started to take away, and it's not that it's not important, but they focused truly on the Massachusetts power standards. And interestingly, the data showed that. So just something that I think is interesting to note. So some of the highlights here. So our areas of strength, I would sort of define that. You can read it for yourself, but those are what I would call like DOK 1 skills, like memorization, identification. Conventions of writing is grammar. That's fairly rote. And of course, in the right-hand column are areas to grow. This is not going to come as a big surprise, but anytime students are asked to analyze, that's where we're falling below the state average. So what's helping us is the areas of strength, but where we're falling below the state is anytime skills are being assessed in the area of analysis or synthesis. Something just to keep in mind as we move forward. Okay, so math, you want to move on to your math, grade 8. This is sort of the same thing. Please keep in mind that in 2021, that's half of the MCAS exam, but interesting to note the percentage above the state was at its highest. Now, 2023, so last year was the year 1 implementation of Carnegie. So we've seen, so pretty obvious in 2022, that was when the state was at an all-time low. We were certainly at an all-time low. But the implementation of Carnegie certainly, I think, has made a big difference along with some of our interventions that we are implementing, which I talked about the last time. So that's grade 8. Grade 10, you're going to see a similar pattern, particularly last year where we saw the highest jump in a long time. And I just want to point this out because math is sort of an area of focus, I think, across the entire district. But back in 2019, that was clearly pre-COVID. And you can see that we were struggling pre-COVID, so this is not a COVID issue. But now that I think we are moving in the right direction, certainly with Anne Marie, our STEM director, and moving towards a curriculum resource that's actually standards aligned, I think has really helped. Am I going too fast? Is this okay? All right, so areas of strength is mostly, I would say, algebra skills, more
concrete skills, expressions, equations, slope. Interestingly, geometry seems to be the area that we struggle the most. And, transformations, graphing, tables, anytime students have to see numbers a little bit differently. So when we're really asking them to look a little bit different at math, you can see that, again, this is where we're falling below the state. So we're going to move on to science quickly here. I know you guys have a long night ahead of you. Grade 8 science, we saw an enormous jump last year. Again, fascinating 2020-23. A huge jump from the year prior. Grade 9, so we test our grade 9 students in physics, and students that do not pass in grade 9, they take the bio MCAS in grade 10. So again, it's a different content. So in 2021, there is no data. And why is there no data? That's because that was the year that the state offered a modified CD. So what does that mean? So the CD is the competency determination for a diploma. So students so the cohort 2021, students could use coursework that they were enrolled in to qualify for their MCAS exam. However, students that wanted to test were able to test if they wanted to qualify for a John and Abigail Adams scholarship. But we don't have any school-wide data because it was a small subset. So once again, I just want you to point out the 2023 change, which is we were 16% over the state. And my feeling, and I could be wrong about this, and I've looked into it. Physics is a math-based science. I think it's interesting that the implementation of Carnegie in 2023 sees an enormous jump in the physics exam, where the year prior, we were only 4% above the state. So I think it's an interesting comparison. I would love to see, to really look a little bit deeper, but I think there's probably something there. It is an algebra-based, it's an algebra-based science. So just some areas of strength, again, identifying parts of a model. Again, that's kind of a DOK one, solar system, rocks and layers. But I just want you to look at the column on the right, because I think that this paints a picture that you've seen across 3 content areas. So when we're asking our students, to reason, to analyze, and to think a little bit deeper, interpret, describe, compare, interpret, we're falling below the state average. I look at this, this is, there are a lot of reasons for this, but I think it's important to notice that this is not just one content area. Some of our struggles are certainly in those patterns are showing in all 3 tested subjects. So, these are some of the things that we do regularly, but it's, certainly important to talk about, but we do an item analysis regularly, which helps us look at specific questions to see where our kids are really struggling, and then comparing one year to the next is not always apples to apples because the cohort is different, right? So we then look at trends. So you take the item analysis, you look at trends that are happening year to year to year. That's no longer an individual student issue, it's a larger problem. So again, we use our MCAS and MAP data to identify the strengths and as well as the areas of growth. And of course, Lindsay over there and Anne Marie over there, they are constantly doing curriculum review cycles, really to ensure that our materials are standards aligned, as well as I think the really important thing that we're doing now, and I thank both of them, but they are ensuring that our instruction is actually content standards, right? Like it matches what we're actually assessing. That's my quick version of our MCAS data. Any questions?
Questions? Comments? Well, thank you very
I
much.
see none. Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
You too, Jen.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving right along to the January 2024 meeting schedule. So on our schedule, we have 3 meetings because the 18th was supposed to be our budget workshop. So we just wanted to bring it to the whole group to see what we would like to do about that. Are we okay with just taking the 18th off of the schedule and just keeping the regular meetings on the 11th and the 25th? Is there any other feeling around that?
Fine with it.
You good with that? Just take the,
Unless we need it, take her out.
all right, taking the 18th out.
General consensus.
Yes. Okay, moving right along to some new policies for the first read. Policy, that's you.
That's me.
All right.
All right, off we go. So our first policy here is JIH, searches and interviews is the new title there. This one, there's been some changes made to this one. What I want to make sure everyone's aware of is that an attorney has vetted this new version of the policy, and that both police departments have also reviewed the policy with Melissa. So, and this is in regards to doing some of those interviews and around the whole policy of illegal substances and such in the schools. So, do you want me to read the whole thing? Okay.
Any questions?
I'm just reading the red real quick.
Okay.
Take your time.
And maybe I can expedite. I think this is based on the presentation that we had by
Correct.
our school students
Yep.
that came.
The civics.
Yes.
And regarding the searches, and tell me if it does or doesn't, do we have to say anything about students, like, are to remain in the classroom during the search? Is that in here? Am I just not skimming in the right spot?
They are going to remain in the classroom. It would take me a second to find where that is.
The search is taking place.
It just doesn't specifically say it that I see
Or they're
it.
not being asked to leave the classroom.
Yeah, either way, I just don't see it. That's why I wanted to check.
We talked a lot about it.
We did, yeah. I feel like it might be in the middle.
I feel like it should be an F somewhere, but I'm not sure. That's just at a quick glance.
We can get that clarified.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's important. I'm thinking it is important because if someone says,
Yeah.
like, why, we used to have the students be removed from the room when these searches happened. And I know that was definitely a point, like a major point.
It
of
was.
the new searches, so.
And I'm wondering if that's perhaps why it's not identified, because it may
Do you
be.
remember? Scotty, do you remember?
I thought we had talked about it.
We talked a
did.
lot
We
about
talked
it.
Yeah.
But I don't see it in writing, so we'll bring it back to the committee.
I mean, I think it could go into F, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe enough. Maybe, yeah.
Who knows?
Any other questions or comments on this one? All right, moving right along.
Okey dokey. IE, Organization of Instruction, and in this, with the legal reference was added, but also the pre-K and 12 plus were missing. Is that in here? Yes. High school levels, but it's not red. Pre-K was missing originally, but it's not red on this one. Oh. I don't know why it's not red. Anyway, the original policy did not have pre-K in there, and so she added pre-K, which is in number 4.
Okay.
And then the legal reference, but I don't know if we need to go back and. Okay. Any questions on that one?
I do think we were supposed to add 12 and postgraduate too.
Oh, yes, that should be in there, too.
There's a couple of things that might be missing in this draft.
Yeah.
With the understanding that some of our children are past
Right.
grade 12.
Yep.
Postgrad is also included at the high school level.
All right, we'll have her add that. Thank you, Robin. Okay. English language learners is our next file.
Wait,
Sorry.
Okay.
I just want to go to number 2, it's not in red, and it says his, her, and we were at a, they, to all policies.
Good catch.
So we'll bring this one back to clean it up.
And file IHBEA, English language learners.
This isn't updated.
This isn't updated, yeah, we're supposed to change the language because No Child Left Behind is noted, but that's still in here. So we'll have to ask.
Yeah. So maybe with these last two, we bring them back and just clarify that the updates, because there should be updates in this one that are not there, and we'll bring them back for a first read. Okay? Okay, perfect.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Can we go back to file JAIH and just a note on on letter C? And because it says all school property such as lockers, classrooms, parking areas, and storage areas, since we're getting that detailed in what the school property is, should we include bathrooms? Because it goes as far as 5
can ask.
areas. Yeah, I'm just curious. Because I know bathrooms can be a very private place as well.
Right.
So it may be best to specify it in there if it's happening, and I don't know if they don't typically search in the bathroom.
We talked about bathrooms.
They do. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll clarify that.
Okay.
That might be a privacy issue thing.
Right, that's why I want to, but it's okay to search, I think it probably should be in the policy.
Yes.
If it's okay to do it.
Yes.
Okay.
With a procedure maybe.
Yeah.
All right.
Well.
Okay. Are we good with those going back for first to the committee? Okay. All right, next, the approval of the MRHS donation to the New England Society for Abandoned Animals. Mr. McMillan?
Good evening, school committee. So this is just another donation for our students have raised funds that they would like to make a donation to the charity. They would like to donate this money for the NESAA. So, and although strictly speaking, it's their funds because it's in a student activity account. So the guidance from the state is you should give your approval before the donation is made.
Any questions?
That sounds good.
Do I have a motion?
I have a motion, I make a motion to accept the Animal Welfare Club of Monomoy Regional High School to donate $200 to the Animal Welfare Club. No, they're not donating it to themselves.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's the
NESAA.
New England Society for Abandoned Animals.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay.
Come on. I have my thing.
All right, moving right along, Mr. McMillan with the FY25 draft budget presentation.
All right, good evening, school committee. So this is the first draft of the budget for FY25, where we have put some numbers, some concrete numbers in, so we can see what it might look like. So I will say this like multiple times, this is really a rough draft because there's a lot of numbers which we just don't know yet, and there's a lot of moving pieces which we will have greater clarity over over the next few months. So with that. So right now, our draft budget for FY25 is just over $47.1 million, so that's 6.1% increase on last year. So to give you a sense of the scale of that increase, this is where that increase would sit in context with all historical increases since the district was formed. So the only increase more significant was way back in FY16, and I believe that was when the high school project came online, the first payments related to that. So that's why you see that jump. So, we'll talk a little about why that's gone up so much. There's a lot going on, including, as Mr. Gruska said earlier, inflation has played a part, but there's a number of areas where we're seeing increases, and I'm just going to highlight those over the next few slides. So we are carrying, so basically what I have done here is I've identified 5 different areas that are significant in driving our increase. They're not the most significant, that's on the next slide. And the number is how much they're increasing the budget by is in this circle, and then there's a name and description. So the first one here on the list is health insurance. So that is the amount of money we pay towards our employees' health insurance if they choose to be part of our programs. We don't actually find out the new rates until February time in next year. So we make an assumption about what it is. Right now we're carrying 10%. That's a fairly, that would be the highest increase there's been in years. So I am, relatively confident that it will be less than 10%. I'm on the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group, a steering committee, and the numbers we are seeing right now in health insurance costs across our program do suggest that we will see an increase, but just not as much as 10%. But that's yet to be decided. We get more first of all, we get information from the health insurance companies that tells they increase their rates, and then we have to decide how much of that is passed on to our members and how much of it is covered by our members, including the towns and school districts, and how much of it is paid, because the municipal health group does have a balance in its fund, and so there's a judgment call on how much we pass on of those costs to towns and staff. So right now it's 10%, so hopefully that will be a little lower. We have $271,000 worth of budget requests, and I'm going to go into a lot more detail on what those reflect the conversations we've been having that started at the budget workshop. So you'll see some of the items, you should see all of the items that were highlighted by principals and directors at that meeting in a list I'm going to show you in a few minutes, some of which are included in the budget. We are also increasing our investment in capital. So it's been a bit of a theme in our presentations of the last couple of years that we have growing capital needs, particularly the middle school, and we really would like to start to tackle the siding in the middle school, and we kind of envisage doing that as a phased approach, and the first phase would be next year, and so that's $300,000 we put aside for that. There are other projects, but that's one of the most significant ones. We're also hopefully would be getting into replacing the first step of the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority program, to replace the roof at the middle school. So if both of those projects get going, then they're going to contribute to this increase in our capital costs. Unfortunately, we're also seeing an increase in utility costs, particularly electricity. So we're part of a joint purchasing group here on the Cape with a number of towns and districts, including Barnstable, they're the biggest one across the Cape, to buy electricity. And the new contract for buying electricity came in and it's significantly higher than our prior contract, and that's going to cost around $75,000. And the last one is transportation. So there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, driver pay went up last year after the budget had been set, and also fuel costs, insurance costs, and also we have added a couple of routes for pre-K because our pre-K program has expanded, and so we've expanded transportation for that. So those are all contributing to that increase. So the other really around staffing. These are as significant, if not more so, than all the other ones combined. The first is our ESSER positions. So the ESSER funding is a funding really from the federal government to help offset the impact of COVID and the impact that had on education. So right now we have around $575,000 worth of salaries that are being funded from ESSER that we would want to maintain those positions, and so they would be moved into the general fund budget. So that would increase our budget $575,000. Alongside that, this number is all other position salary and position and salary changes. So this number covers a multitude of things. It includes step and lane increases for staff who are already under contract. So, and as you know, we are also in negotiations with our employee associations for next year's contract. And so beyond step and lane, which will be included regardless of the outcome of the contract, there is also likely to be other changes to the contract, including a cost of living increase and possible changes to the salary schedule. So all of those included, plus savings that we've experienced from turnover. So when staff leave and are replaced, often they're replaced by people who are lower experienced and therefore lower on the salary schedule. So we get to save a little bit of money there. And the last one, also significant, is that this includes our plan to renorm class sizes, amongst other things, to help. And where we have class sizes have got not too small, but smaller than the district's guidelines. So if we increase class sizes, that will reduce the number of teachers required in that grade, in that school. And so we're planning to reduce the number of positions by renorming class sizes. And that will also help to bring down costs. So you've got factors pushing up, which are, the contract negotiations, steps and lanes, and then things that are pushing down, which is turnover and hopefully reduction in the number of positions. But that in particular is one that's going to change a lot over the next few months. We've only just started negotiations. We've got a long way to go on that. We also have to calculate, some of the other savings from each other position changes have yet to be totally worked out. So those will change over the next few months. There are also a few areas where we are saving money. So you may notice I ran out of ideas for these icons. It's been a busy day. I don't have time to find specific icons. I'll have them for the next one.
Okay.
But that's even, he was even here once. Look, there's him again. So I also was like, afterwards, I was like, should down be red or should that be green?
Green. I was just thinking, thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So,
Green, good, red, bad.
Yes, you're right. So imagine
It's
everything
messing with
flips.
me.
So yeah.
Take notes.
So yeah.
Better graphics,
Yes,
get your
thank you.
colors right.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So green's bad. Red's
No.
good. I mean,
Green should be good, but in this case, it's bad.
All right, so, and the savings, so out of district tuition, so that's, this is not something we have a lot of control over, so it could change, but this is when students need to receive their education outside the district, normally, primarily because of special education needs, which we are not able to meet inside the district. We pay external schools in order to pay them, and that is often very expensive, making sure that the students have everything they need, and just because of, these things, because we don't have a lot of students, fluctuations in the numbers can have a big impact on the total cost, and so we've seen that cost going down for next year. We also have a reduction in high school debt payments, so that's the construction of this high school, just the way the schedule, so the way the loan payments work, they go down. We have the way the schedule works, we reduce around $55,000 each year. And so these things are not things we are really controlling at this point, it's just things that are nevertheless helping to fund some of those other things. And we actually, during the COVID period, we bought a lot of Chromebooks, and so we also had leases, and so some of those leases have expired. We don't need to replace them this year because we have some that we already bought. So we prior to COVID, we just got into this habit where the idea was all the Chromebooks would be leased, and then once you got to the end of the lease, those Chromebooks would be disposed of, and a new lease would be started. So you just have this rolling lease. So COVID kind of blew all that up because we were in the position of having to go and buy Chromebooks, and that interfered with that process. So we have this momentary reprieve where it goes down to $30,000, but next year we're going to have to add them back on. So enjoy while it lasts. All right. Sorry, I know I'm going quite quick, but nobody's ever complained about that for budget resolutions. So the budget requests, which I mentioned earlier. So I did separate. So from the presentations at the budget workshop, I have not included anything under $10,000 because we're going to focus on funding that through the regular budget without significant increases. And I think it's more important that we focus on these items which are over $10,000 and have a bigger impact. So working with the district leadership team, we have put these in a kind of priority order, which is, I say kind of, because the ones near the top are the most important, and then there's a kind of middle section, and then there's ones in grey which are not included. It's not necessarily that one is more important than two, or two is more than three, but it kind of, as you work down your way down the table, they become a lower priority. So the first 3 or 4 are really ones which we don't have we really do need to do. We're already invested in ELA curriculum. Our social studies textbook in the middle school, I'm not sure if we have one, but what we have is inadequate. And we have a IEP needs to meet, and that's why we need to increase these FTEs. We don't really have a lot of choice in that if we want to continue to meet our basic requirements. There is significant professional development we're hoping to invest in. And then these 4 items down here in grey are not included in the budget. So all the ones above this are included, these 4 are not. We are hoping to increase the science and technology supplies budget at the high school. The principal there talked about that. We're looking at possible other funds for that. We still hope to do this, but we're looking to see if we can find grants or other funds. The district has a number of revolving accounts which we may be able to use. So we're investigating whether or not we can avoid hitting the general fund for that. And likewise with the Shark Yard at the CES, we're also hoping that we'll be able to secure grants for that. Meanwhile, these other 2 positions are more staffing positions, and given the ongoing negotiations at the moment, we wanted to put those on hold and come back to them at a future point. So we put these in a priority order because we have to, but all of these are important, and all of these, we would love to be able to fund all of these, but we recognise that it might not always be possible. And saying that, except for the science and courtyard project, because we hope we will be able to fund them elsewhere. Any questions on any of those? All right.
Michael, I have a question.
Yes. Oh, yeah, please.
And I don't know if it's for you or Robin or to be put on the table for later, but the professional development related to the implementation of the new strategic plan and portrait of a graduate, is that just a placeholder? Is there some specifics? That's a big ticket item.
Yes, it's a placeholder for now. Anytime you have a new strategic plan or another, with the portrait of a graduate, you have a certain amount of anticipated costs to support the implementation of those 2 documents, I guess you would call them. For example, like understanding what collaboration or what a communicator looks like. You oftentimes need to build that understanding so that we can start backward mapping it from the portrait of the graduate time all the way back down to the kindergarten teacher who begins building those skills. So there's certain different professional development organizations and things that help support that out there, and we just haven't identified them yet. Along with that is a strategic plan, and so unfortunately whenever unfortunately, whenever I touch something, it seems to cost money. And so the strategic plan is one of those places. Anytime you're developing something new, you need to build capacity of the people who are going to be doing the things that you're asking them to do. So any pillars that might come up within that strategic plan, we've talked about a couple already during some of the planning periods. We've talked about literacy, we've talked about diversity, equity, inclusion, some of those things. Professional development costs money to build the capacity of the people who are delivering those skills.
Okay.
So there is both, it is both specific and general. There are some specific ideas in that, and there is general. And I would say, high quality professional development is expensive. So, we have found, and it has got more expensive over the last few years, and that's why that's quite a high number.
I just want to add one more thing too about high-quality instructional materials and high-quality instructional professional development. Nobody's local.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to find high-quality professional development on the Cape. I mean, we've been talking about this. So that's why I think we're beginning to see the increased cost really kind of jump, because they're flying in, a lot of the developers are flying in from other places. So in turn, those costs are higher, so the people who, like the Carnegie rep, and they're starting to lift those costs to us as well.
Thank you. Ms. Ebert-Long?
I have a question. When we did Portrait of a Graduate and Strategic Plan, the professional development wasn't part of the cost for what we had budgeted for those two pieces. Is that my understanding?
So what we budgeted was for the development of those documents.
Of the Portrait of a Graduate.
Yeah, so I was working.
So this is actually.
This is for the implementation.
This is actually for the strategic plan
Yeah.
rollout.
Yes,
Like you're saying,
exactly.
we need to. So probably in the future, we should maybe take that number or project what we think that number should be and incorporate that into our thought process in a couple of years when we redo the strategic plan again.
Yeah.
And incorporate, because it is a big number,
Yeah.
but it's also important.
Yeah.
But we could be better prepared if we had it up front and kind of had it in our mind what we were,
Yeah.
going to be moving towards.
Absolutely agree.
Thank you.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
No, thank you. All right. So now what I'm going to move on to is how we pay for that budget. So there's two ways really. There's one in general fund revenue and state aid. So that's money we're receiving from the state and a couple other places. And then there's the assessments to the towns. So first of all, fund revenue and state aid. So these are also just they're slight guesstimates because we don't have a lot of guidance from the state yet where these numbers are going to land, and it's not until they tell us that we will actually know. So, we can, so I've estimated where I think they might come in. Chapter 70, our Chapter 70 increases have been relatively low recently, so I expect that unfortunately will continue. I mean, $124,000 isn't nothing, but other districts, and because of the Student Opportunity Act, have seen much larger increases where they have a lot higher low-income rate numbers, and other items feed into that. But our and ELL numbers and our numbers are lower compared to other parts of the state, and so they're seeing larger increases, whereas our increases have been relatively low. The excess and deficiency. So we've talked about that before. That's that is the money, essentially the money we have left over at the end of each year. Once you take into account all our budget and all our revenue and expenditure, the state certifies how much money we have left over. It's a bit like free cash for towns. So we have been budgeting around $800,000 from that for the last couple of years. And we keep talking about trying to get that down, but it never seems to be the right time. So maybe next year. All right. So when you've reduced that, it just increases the budget, the assessments to, if we took $200,000 off that, that's $200,000 that have to come either from the top of the budget or from the towns. So we're okay for now, but at some point we're going to have to reckon with that. Our charter school tuition, that's the money that we send off for students. Actually, sorry, that's not. So crazy formula the state uses. We have to pay this for students essentially through the state for students who go to charter schools. But in order to reduce the impact of that, the state gives us a little bit of money back. I won't bore you with the formula, because I probably don't remember it. But basically we get a little bit of money back, and I am expecting it to increase slightly. Medicaid is also money we get for providing medical service to students within the district. We are also hoping to continue to see a significant amount of interest from our treasurer, Paul Donlan, doing a great work with the money that we have on hand, making sure it's in as far high interest earning accounts as it can be. We have some miscellaneous revenue, and we have transportation aid. So unfortunately, transportation aid is down. So there's two parts to our transportation aid. There's the money we get from the state, and there's money we have left over from previous years' transportation aid. So what happens is we budget right now an amount. So say I budget for next year, just hypothetically, $500,000. But then next year we actually get $600,000. Then I can use that extra $100,000 to fund a future year's budget. And we've been doing that for a while. We've been taking a few $100s and putting it forward. But this year, we only have $19,000 from a couple of years ago, just because our estimate and the actual were just closer. So in previous years, the state's been throwing a bit more money into transportation as it's gone through the budget process. So the first number you get has been lower than later numbers. And so that's given this little kind of this little bump for years. This year, back a couple of years ago, the number they gave at the start of the budget process was the number we got at the end. So there was no delta, and so there's no more money. It was like $19,000 to add to this transportation aid. Does that make sense? It's a little complicated, but so that's all contributing to a small decrease in our general fund revenue and state aid. So I'm definitely being a little pessimistic. Maybe, fingers crossed, it might be a little higher, but we just need to wait and see. And then that might, if it's not quite this bad, then we might actually have some to help. But really, where it would be better is around this chapter 70. Fingers crossed. So, what that does to the assessments. So we had the budget. We took off from the budget the revenue, and then the rest gets split between the two towns. It's a large budget. It's large assessments. So it's a big budget increase. So we see big assessment increases. So the increase to Harwich is almost $2 million, just under at $1.998 million, that's 6.8%. And the Chatham increase is actually percentage-wise larger at $774,000. So both significant increases. And again, I'm sorry, I know it's boring now, but this will change because one of the big things that affect this is this local minimum contribution. So this is something that the state sets. We will find this out hopefully in January. And once we find out that number, because that's based on this year's foundation enrollment. And essentially what it means is we have the assessments charged in two pies, if you like. There's the minimum local contribution pie, which the state sets how big it is and the split between the two towns. And then there's the pie of everything that's left over that our formula decides how it's split up. So if the minimum local contribution pie grows significantly, that actually reduces how much is left for us to fund with our assessment. So this can make a big difference to what the final assessments are. And so I've estimated what they might be based on the information I have on foundation enrollment right now, and I'm going to show you that in a second. And it does move a significant amount over to Harwich. Now, some of that gets then resolved down here, but it does affect the final numbers. So they could change either way. It could mean more for Chatham, it could mean more for Harwich, it could be it could be less for both. But we will wait and see when we get the final numbers from the state. But this just gives you a sense. So why am I showing you this? It just gives you a sense of where we're going, the magnitude of the figures we're talking about right now, and where we could possibly end up. And any questions on that? I just have one other slide to show you a little bit more about the minimum contribution.
Any questions?
All right.
Comments?
All right, so what this slide is just shows you, because this will, I'm sure, come up in future conversations. So there's two charts here. One is on the left, Chatham's foundation enrollment and minimum local contribution. The foundation enrollment is in this blue line here, and the minimum local contribution is this orange line. And on the right-hand side is the same chart, but for Harwich. And they're the same scales on both sides, so you can see the relative size. So the blue, if you look at the blue line first, you can see that both have gone down, and actually their slopes are so similar, like here and here are very similar, and the most recent are very similar in actual numbers. They're quite similar, but because Chatham is a smaller number, it's a higher percentage. And so that's why the percentage shift is really what gets us. And then the orange line is the minimum local contribution, and that's what the state sets, and it is related to foundation enrollment, but really it's related to change in foundation enrollment, and that's what's pushing up Harwich's over Chatham's. All right.
Thank you. Questions? It's gotta be some.
Doesn't have to
I'm
be.
scared to ask. I feel like we had a conversation, maybe it was the fall, about OPEB
Yep.
and where we're at as far as putting more money away and being prepared for the future. And I know we're talking about the budget, so I was wondering if you had any comments,
So that's a
updates,
great
or we're
point.
just
That's a
not
great
even.
question. This does not include an increase in our OPEB. We'll continue putting $100,000 in as we have. But yeah, that might be something worth considering. But it's just,
It's definitely
the question
worth
is a bit like reducing
considering.
E&D. Is this the year to do it? It's like with everything else that's going on.
And right now, we're contributing 100,000,
Yeah.
which is just not enough to get us to where we're gonna have to be.
Well, that's a big question, because it's just trying to decide where we have to be and when we would have to be there by. So your OPEB fund is basically being able to fund, the total amount of your post-employment benefits. But that's a number which we're never actually going to have to pay out. So really, it's kind of like a savings fund to help to pay those costs as they become a larger proportion of our overall budget. But we're some ways away from that becoming, I'm arguing against myself from the last meeting because I was saying how important it is to look at it, but it's not an immediate problem. But again, unless we resolve it, particularly here where we have falling enrollment and therefore falling staff numbers, then post-employment benefits are going to become a bigger proportion of our budget. So that might be worth maybe we should address that in a finance subcommittee when we go through the numbers in a bit more detail. And then we can come back and present to the school committee on what our plan is.
And definitely, once we get through the next round of contracts,
Yeah,
we'll have a better
well, exactly,
look at what, the next 3 years are gonna look like,
Yep.
and
and where we should go.
it's been in the back of my mind for a while, and I know we hadn't talked about it, I think it
Yeah.
was the fall.
Yeah,
But we hadn't talked about it regarding the budget yet this year.
Yeah.
So,
but I definitely think it'd be
thought
a
I had
good
to bring it
idea.
up.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
So I think that it would be really wise of us to have a concrete plan, even if the concrete plan is, let's just keep doing $100,000 for the next 20 years, and then we'll worry about it. Or if we have some other plan, but just be clear on what our plan is, what the results will be, and when it might become an issue, or what are the warning signals to look for. Like maybe we're fine now until we reach a certain percentage of something, and then we would increase our amounts.
And I know our excess and
Kind of
deficiency is down.
Yes, so yeah, our excess and deficiency is very similar to what it was last year, so it's not going down, so we've not added to it, and we keep taking money out of it, so there is a risk that will go down. So we might see a drop in that next year if it continues on the trend it's been on.
Mike and Nancy Scott and Steve Duvall's coming out.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
I'm hearing
thank
it.
you.
Terry's
I like
smiling.
it. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moving right along to subcommittee representative and liaison reports. We've had some subcommittee meetings over the last couple weeks, so just a quick report out, well, hopefully a quick report out. Negotiations subcommittee?
As I think a couple of people mentioned it, we're moving along. We had a couple of meetings, and it's a good start.
Perfect. Any questions? All right. Policy sub?
Yeah, we've been meeting monthly and continuing to review policies. The next big policy that's going to be up for review is the field trip policy, actually. And that's going to take some time because there's a lot of things we want to look at there. So our hope is to bring that to the school committee February, March timeframe.
Perfect. And finance sub?
I wasn't present at the meeting. Terry was,
I was.
and Scotty was. Would one of you mind just doing, we've pretty much talked about probably everything we've talked about.
Terry, do you want to talk? Just kind of summarize what we talked about?
Michael, could you really highlight the Finance Committee far better than I could?
Yes.
Don't trip.
Thank you, Scotty.
Oh, okay.
It's called passing.
It's
the buck.
delegating.
Delegating.
So the finance subcommittee discussed a draft of the budget, and they really welcomed the work of the business manager, said he was doing a really good job. That's mostly all I can remember. No, so we reviewed an early draft of the FY24 budget. So we're really trying to go into a schedule with our finance subcommittees so they get to see the slides before we come to this meeting, so that they're better informed about what's going on in the budget. So we looked at, there was a few numbers have changed, but basically that's those slides that I just presented. We reviewed, and there was discussion and some changes made following that discussion.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving right along to our superintendent's report. Dr. Millen,
Yes,
do we
so
have?
I have recognitions.
Okay.
I do not have a report, but I am going to channel Dr. Carpenter again now. But he would like to recognize Peter R. Marsh Foundation for their grant in the amount of $1,000 to support the Monomoy Regional Middle School Music Program, which unfortunately just ended their event tonight, but everybody seemed happy walking out of here tonight. And also a great job to the Harwich PTO for its annual Holiday Bazaar on December 2nd, which is a great community event, and a special thanks to the many volunteers who made it possible, including dozens of adult volunteers and nearly 70 student volunteers from Monomoy Middle and Monomoy High Schools. So thank you.
Excellent. We do have one more. We have a policy file HA, negotiations goals, that came back as a second reading tonight with a potential vote. That's great. Do we have anything? It didn't change.
There was
so
no recommendations to make any changes, so.
do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Excellent. We have had the presentation of warrants, and just before we adjourn, he was here at the beginning of our meeting. I thought he would stay so we could say thank you in person, but he scooted out. But I just want to say thank you publicly to Mr. Jim Birchfield, who was our Director of Instructional Technology for many years, and he really did a great job to support our district in all of the changing technology over the years. So I hope that he has a wonderful retirement and enjoys his travels. And not to put you on the spot, but we are welcoming Mackenzie Yarlitz as our Director of Technology, who has had a seamless transition with Jim, and we look forward to working with you in the future. So thank you.
You're
All
going
right.
to love us.
So I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? And we will adjourn at 8:01.